Hello and welcome back to the In the Arena podcast. Today's episode number 10, is with Tom Dickinson, public speaker and mindset coach from the UK. He's got an incredible story, guys. There's a fair warning that goes into this beforehand. It's a deep story. It's about a serious subject of mental health, of suicide, and of depression as well. And it's raw, it's emotional, and I'm very grateful for the fact that Tom shared this story. I came across it myself on Instagram and have been following Tom for a couple months now, and with his journey, what he's getting into with the public speaking and some mentoring and coaching as well. And it's a story that I thought that I just needed to share. It's one that I really wanted to sit down with him and talk. And I've never met Tom in my life. This was the first time that we'd ever have a conversation, and it was brilliant. It was such a nice conversation to have about a topic that I'm very passionate about myself, and I think that one that we do need to start speaking about more, especially in terms of mental health. With men, we get told to talk, but sometimes we don't actually know what to talk about. So this is a story of the content, of the real shit, the real raw stuff that's necessary to talk about. So without further ado, step into the arena. Hope you guys enjoy. We're back in the arena today. I'm joined by Tom Dickinson. Tom, welcome to In the Arena, man. I'm super excited to chat to you today and get to hear your story.
No, thanks for having me, mate. I really appreciate it.
No, of course. And basically, for the listeners, what they're going to find out is that I actually came across your story on social media. I've never met you in my life, and this is actually the first podcast I've done with someone I don't know. So I'm very excited about this too. But basically, without further ado, man, I'm going to give you the mic and just let you share your story and a bit about your background.
Yeah, no, sounds good. So I'm Tom. So I'm from the UK. I do public speaking around mental health mainly. I run another business as well, which supplies school and office furniture, but my passion lies with the public speaking. I sadly lost my brother to suicide in 2015, and then from that I had my own struggles with my mental health and suicidal thoughts around 2017, and luckily I made it through it, and I got past that period of my life, and now I'm doing okay for myself. I'm in a good place. I'm happy. I like to think I'm smashing life. So the motivation behind the speaking is to say that you can go through those dark times and those challenges, but you can make it through the other side just with a bit of perseverance and the right mindset. You can pretty much achieve whatever you want.
It's I think there's a lot to unpack in that, but that's incredible, and it's obviously a very, very important message for you personally with your background. So where did it actually start? Like when you started to deal with this kind of thing yourself, and when you actually wanted to get into the talking business, was it an idea that was just like, I understand there's a lot of people who may be struggling as well, and is it just that message?
So when I started to get through the other side of my own struggles, I thought to myself, I've got through this now, but Liam didn't. So I need to try and help the people like Liam that are in that position where they're close to the end, and they just need a bit of help and a bit of motivation to get them through it. I've done it, so I can help them by basically saying, I was in the same place as you, but I'm not anymore, and this is how I've done it. And how it all came about was going back to the other business. I was dealing with a school, and it was the college part of the school, so the older kids. We were kitting out that area of the school, and the head of that part was choosing the furniture, and we ended up getting on really, really well. And I explained what had happened to my brother, explained about my own struggles, and nothing at that point in time came from it. But then really sadly, over the summer holidays, two of their kids ended up tragically taking their own life. And then she rang me in the September and said, this has happened. I think what we need to do is you need to get in front of the kids and tell the kids your story. And it's a powerful story, what you've been through, but to get to where you are now, obviously it could help a lot of people, and it could motivate them as well. So this was in the September of 2018, I believe, and we sat down over a period of a few months and came up with what is now Tom's Talks. And then I delivered the first talk in January 2019, which was it was unbelievable. I've always been quite a confident person because the business that I run, before I ran it, I was the sales side of it, so I was always in front of people speaking, presenting, stuff like that. And I've always been quite a confident person, but then to do that, it just sort of, yeah, it was good. I loved it, and I love it now. Even now, these years later, there's no better feeling than standing in front of hundreds of people and telling your story, and hopefully knowing that by telling that story it might have helped somebody. But for me, it's my own sort of therapy in a way for what happened to my brother, and obviously my own struggles and stuff like that.
Yeah, I bet there's a real sense of passion and fulfillment when you do it. But I've seen a little bit on your social media about your story. But for people who have been new to it, do you mind just going into a bit deeper about about what you've been through?
Yeah, so as a family, we were privileged growing up. The business that I run now, my dad actually started that, and from very early on, he was very successful with it. So with that, we had a lot more than other kids growing up. Like I said, we were very lucky and very fortunate. But doesn't always mean everything. And unfortunately, my brother, so I'm the youngest of what was four. Myself, Liam, Gemma, and then Alex is the oldest. And Liam was the sort of kid that would go out, and if there was a right way and a wrong way of doing it, it would always do the wrong way and always make the wrong choices, and unfortunately hung around with the wrong crowd and made the wrong decisions. And that was what he was like from a very young age. But then as he grew into his teenage years, he started experimenting with different drugs, came across different people, and it wasn't until about 16 that his downfall started to really unveil. He had a really horrific scooter accident, like a moped, and he was knocked off that, and he was in hospital for months. The doctors basically said it was a miracle that he survived, but with that there was a lot of trauma. He suffered brain damage. He was very insecure anyway, but with the injuries that he had, it made him even more insecure, and it really messed him up physically and mentally. And I think the trauma from that then spelled into his later years and really affected his mental health. But the way that he self-medicated was he'd take ketamine, which is a horse tranquilizer originally, but it's been derived and turned into a recreational drug. And because of the scooter accident, he got about 50 grand in compensation, and he got it when he turned 18. But when he turned 18, he was going into this vicious cycle, going out all the time, taking drugs, in particular ketamine, hanging around with the wrong people, making the wrong choices, and then it just got fueled with £50,000 as well. So it was a recipe for disaster, really. And from 18 to 22, when he passed away, he struggled daily with this ketamine addiction. And for me personally, it was always really difficult and hard because my older brother and sister are like 5 years and 7 years older, so they'd moved out. They were obviously later stages of their life, so it was always me and Liam. He was 3 years older than me, and even though it was a nightmare, we were really close and we were best mates. But with that came the struggles of always making sure that he wasn't doing stuff that he shouldn't have been doing, and making sure that he was making the right choices. And obviously being his younger brother and not his older brother, it made it even more difficult because who listens to the younger brother? So even to a point where they were like, I was paying off drug dealers, paying off his debts, people coming to the house. It was towards the end, it was a fucking nightmare, to be honest. It was awful. But then really sadly what happened was my dad was going to America on holiday, and this obviously left me and Liam alone. And normally we'd be buzzing because we'd be like, Dad's away, we can have parties, we've got our own freedom, it's just me and you against the world sort of thing. But this time, unfortunately, my dad had gone away this particular day. He'd chosen to ignore me all day, and it got to later on in the evening, and after ignoring me all day, obviously I was very worried, and he came home and walked through the door, and he was just off his face on ketamine. I don't know. Are you from New Zealand or Australia?
Yeah, New Zealand.
In New Zealand.
Yeah.
So my brother actually he went to Australia to get away from where we live, to get away from this rut that he was in. And he said when he was there, he was like, "There is drugs out here, but not like to the same extent that there is in the UK." And when he was there, he didn't touch this drug. So, but unfortunately, he came back and straight back into this routine of taking it every day. But really sadly, what happened was he got back from this day, and I was worried. But then because he ignored me all day, and he was on this drug, and he'd driven on the drug, I was like really upset with him and pissed off with him, and obviously not just this, but of everything else, like paying off his debts, just dealing with his addiction every single day. I just had this pent up frustration that just all came out of me, and I just said some really awful, nasty things to him. And even to this day, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about what I said. And we'd had this massive argument. 10-15 minutes later, I'd gone to find where he is, and sadly he'd taken his own life and he'd hung himself. So I got him down and gave him CPR, but it wasn't enough, and I lost him. It was shit. It was awful. I won't wish it upon anybody, to be honest, mate. But the thing about life is that life throws things at you in a weird and wonderful way, and sometimes the most awful, traumatic things in your life turn out to be something that spurs on positive and brightness. And it was awful, and there's not a day that goes by I don't think about it, but I wouldn't be standing in front of hundreds of people and hopefully helping other people if that would have not have happened. So I am a big believer in things happen for a reason, and you've got to. Life for me is about changing the worst days and using that as fuel to become the best days, and turning negatives into positives, and using whatever trauma you've experienced to help other people and get them through their struggles and the hard times that they're going through. And from that, obviously, with what I saw, it fucked me up quite badly, to be fair. But the worst mistake I made was I saw how upset my mum was, and I sort of said to myself, I'm going to make myself as busy as I can. Bearing in mind, I'm only 19 at this point. I just started working for my dad, so I was really driven and motivated to do well for him. It just sort of fueled me in the wrong way to just make myself as busy as I possibly could. I said, I'm going to be strong for my mum. I'm going to get my family, especially my mum, through this period of our lives, which I did, but it was the worst thing I could have done. And then 2 years later, it all just came crashing down on me and just hit me like a ton of bricks. Coming up to my 21st birthday, up to the second anniversary of Liam's passing, and it just all hit me, and I just felt so depressed and so down. And at that moment in time, I couldn't put my finger on why I was feeling like that. Obviously, 5 years on, a lot more wiser, a lot more mature, a lot more experience. I can pinpoint exactly why it was that I felt that way. One, I'd not dealt with the loss of my brother. There was a couple of other things going on in my life that weren't going too great. And it sent me into one particular evening where I was really suicidal and just thinking, do I want to be here anymore? If I take my own life tonight, will this pain that I'm feeling go away? And you might have seen it in one of my videos, but the reason why I didn't take my own life was because I had it feels weird saying it out loud sometimes, but I had a voice that said, if you take your own life, then your family's going to go through everything again like they did with Liam. So don't fucking do that. Why would you do that? Luckily I didn't. And there's a saying that when you take your own life, the pain doesn't go away. It just gets passed on to your loved ones. And obviously Liam isn't here anymore, and what I'm doing, I like to think I'm doing well and I'm doing something good, but it's never the same, and the pain is still there. It's just it gets a little bit easier as time goes on. That's my story. To be fair, that's why I do what I do and how I've got to where I am today. Sorry, something to mention. What spurred me on to get better and become better mentally was I had a conversation with my dad, and my dad just sort of pestered me and kept mithering me and saying what's up. you don't seem yourself. Is everything okay? Till one day where I just broke down in front of him, and I opened up and told him everything, and we just had a massive chat, and I just cried and cried and cried, and just got everything off my chest. And then from there, that was when I then got better, and not straight away. Obviously, it wasn't overnight. I was like, bang, I'm back. It was eventually I got better, and I got back to where I needed to be, and essentially, I got back to being Tom. So,
Hey, thank you for sharing that, and just you can tell it's raw emotion on both ends. I can tell. I mean, obviously not in the same room, but when you mention your brother, there's a smile that does come across your face, where like there's some very good memories, and that connection's obviously still very strong. But then the whole story after and the effects that happens. Yeah, you just answered my next question essentially. When you talk with your dad, because in one of your videos you said that you went to a bench, right? That's actually it's for your brother. It's like Liam's bench, or is that right? And then that's when you guys had a chat and you really opened up.
Yeah, so we was at a business event initially for the family business, and this event was going to be a huge event potentially for us. There was a lot of people from schools that do the buy-in, so we was going to hopefully make a lot of new working relationships and connections and networking and stuff like that. But this particular event just went really shit, and this added to my upset and added to the way that I was feeling. And my dad just dragged me to one side and said, like, what's wrong with you? You just don't seem yourself whatsoever. And we left this event, and my dad's quite old school. He's quite not posh, but he'd never swear, and he's quite prude and stuff like that. And he was just like, "What the fuck's wrong with you?" Like, shook me, and I had a full suit on, and in front of all these potential clients, and I just burst out crying. And my dad just went, "Come on, fuck this, we're going home. Get in the car." And then we went home and went up to my brother's memorial bench where we sat, and yeah, I just fucking cried my eyes out for hours, just offloading to him about everything that was going on in my life and everything that was a problem, and getting to the root cause of why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and obviously not getting over the loss of Liam and not dealing with that grief properly.
Yeah, why do you think we, like, especially as men, like you talked about before, like there's a culture in Australia, there's a culture in New Zealand and the UK as well, and I think just across the board with men, how we have to be strong and we have to be stubborn and we have to just deal with our emotions. During that time, like if you're looking back when you're just like sucking everything up and just holding it in, do you think it's because you're afraid to actually, like, you almost know what's going to happen when like you let it out? Is that why like you think that we really just hold it in, or do you think it's because you're scared of the other side or don't want to be judged by other people?
I think in a way, yeah. I think for myself in that period of my life, I looked at my life and take my brother out of the equation. I lived with my dad. I had a loving family. I was doing quite well for a 19-year-old, and I just couldn't put my finger on why am I feeling this way. I've got no reason to feel like this, which then made me even more frustrated and more upset. But obviously, like I said, 5 years on now, looking back at that point in my life, it was very clear to see why I was feeling like that. But at that moment in time, I couldn't understand why I was feeling so upset and depressed. But I think as a whole, as men, I think unfortunately there is this stigma, because if you go back from now to hundreds of years ago, a man would typically go to work, or where I'm from in Yorkshire, they'd go down the mines, they'd provide for the family, and if they couldn't provide, then the family was fucked. So if they then one day turned around and said, "I can't go to work today, my mental health is suffering," everyone would just laugh at them and say, "What are you on about? That's not even a real thing. Unless you're physically broken, unless you can physically see it, then people wouldn't understand it." And obviously it's not until the last 5-10 years where mental health is come to light and being seen as something that is just as important as your physical health. But I genuinely believe that that's why there is such a stigma around male mental health, especially because of the old-fashioned norms and the working class norms that there is with men. That we have to provide for our families, which we do 100%. But just because you're struggling with your mental health doesn't mean that you can't open up and talk about it.
Yeah, that's great, transitioning on to like this next kind of topic I want to talk about in terms of, I think that the stigma right now in the world, especially around mental health with men, is that it's great to talk. People are saying that we should talk more and more, which is so good, and like you see it in terms of people advertising Men's Mental Health Month, things like this, and people say talk. But one thing that I've really struggled with is that people say talk, but they don't actually share the stories, or they don't share what to talk about. And it's when I came across your story, when you're actually so open and honest and telling the real events of what happens, how do you when you talk to these kids, these school kids, and when you go give these talks, how do you say to them, this is like the actual content and this is what you should be sharing?
I'd say that what I've said previously is sometimes I feel that people don't want to open up, or they have this fear of talking to other people because they have this fear that they might say, I'm not okay, and that the person that they open up to won't know what to say, which, sometimes people don't know what to say. But I think it's very important to understand that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to necessarily know what to say. It's just then letting that person that is struggling start to open up and let them get to the root cause of why it is they're feeling that way. And just, it doesn't have to all happen at once. It can be over a period of time, a period of conversations, but it's literally just sitting there listening non-judgmentally and letting them open up and talk. And then when they start talking, then they'll start realizing more and more about what it is they're going through, what issues they've got, what might be going well, what might not be going well. They don't know unless they start opening up, just like I did when I opened up to my dad. I didn't know what was wrong until I started talking to my dad, and then it all just came out, and I started talking about absolutely everything that was going on in my life, good and bad. So
no, that's powerful. After you started talking to your dad, when you actually started opening up, what were the steps afterwards? Did you end up doing any therapy, or what kind of steps did you take afterwards?
So in terms of therapy, I had therapy when my brother first passed away, but it wasn't for me. For me, I think obviously at that period of my life, I was very much about forgetting what had happened, and this therapy was just constantly bringing up what had happened, and it just frustrated me at that moment in time. Again, 5 years on, looking back, I can see why they wanted me to talk about it, because they wanted me to get to the root cause of not just Liam's passing, but whatever else was going on in my life. But at that very moment in time, it wasn't right for me. What was right for me was getting into my routine and getting into good habits, which is something that I've established over the last 5 years. Like, my routine is, I put my success of what I've done at my age so far down to my habits and my routine. And without my routine and my habits, then I wouldn't be the person I am, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing every day. And for me, that's how I stay on the top of my game, and I stay mentally at my best, is by sticking to my routine and sticking to my habits. Just for example, going to the gym is one non-negotiable for me. I don't go every single day, obviously, but like 5-6 times a week. Even if I go and I just go for a steady walk on the treadmill, just going and doing something when you especially can't be arsed, you just know that it's going to make you feel a million times better. And I always say that, especially on the days when you're having a particularly bad day and things aren't going so well, go to the gym, because the problems that you had before, they won't seem half as bad after. So just an example, non-negotiable is the gym, is lifting weights, doing some cardio, just getting heart rate up. But it's very important to understand that is what works for me. It might not work for everybody else. People have different ways of helping improve their mental health, just staying consistent with their day-to-day life. But going back to the question at hand, how I stay mentally okay and at the top of my game is just down to my habits and my routine.
No, that's key. And also one thing that you share, and it's actually been a really key theme throughout this podcast when I'm talking to high performance athletes, business people, they always say that you become basically the people that you surround yourself with as well. And I know that you share some of this in your talks too with people, because it's like that. Like when you were talking about Liam, your brother, and the people that he was around with, you end up being sucked into that environment and things. So for yourself, did you find people to be around throughout that time? Was it just kind of, or did you kind of drag yourself into that first, or was that conscious during your struggling time?
So I actually had this conversation not long ago. So I've got, right now in this period of my life, I've got 3 best friends. I've got Brad, who was with me the night that Liam passed away. So we have unfortunately that bond of going through that event together. But with that, is my ride or die in terms of if I need him, he's there 100%. Obviously, we've got a lot in common, and we always have a laugh. But when you go through that with somebody, that bond's never broken. It's always there, and he's been my best mate ever since that day. And then my other best friend is Lloyd, who was actually Liam's best friend. And when Liam passed away, Lloyd made it his duty to look after me and make sure that I was okay. And from that, we've stemmed this, beautiful bond and like a brotherhood that's, unbeatable. And then my other closest friend is Elliot. And again, he's just the kind of guy that I look up to, and he's doing unbelievable things in the world, and he motivates me to be a better person every day. But the thing that they've all got in common is that they all motivate me to be a better person. They're always there for me whenever I need them. They're always at the end of the phone. But they're the only 3 people, apart from my partner, who's also part of my circle, who makes me the person I am today, that I can just be my 100% real self in front of. You don't have to pretend to be anybody else. You don't have to put on a show. You don't have to watch what you're saying. Like, you can just be your 100% weird self and not have any judgment. But one period of my life that I really struggled with was I had like a 3-year period where, I've nothing against these people whatsoever. They're all sound, good people. But I was trying to impress people that now I look back and think, why the fuck was I doing that? And there was a period, like probably a 3-year period, where I was hanging around with people just for the sake of hanging around with them. They didn't benefit me in any way. They didn't add anything to my life. It wasn't probably till about 18 months ago or 2 years ago when I started to really think to myself, these are the people that, when I spend time with these people, I leave feeling re-energized, uplifted and motivated, and I just feel much better about myself. And like I said, that's my partner and my 3 best friends. And these other people, like, again, they never do anything intentionally wrong, but I just leave thinking just negative, like just talking shit. You're not doing anything with your life. You're not trying to better yourself. You're not trying to better me. You're not adding any value to my life whatsoever. So why am I hanging around with it?
No, it makes complete sense, and it's incredible, like how those people in your life can actually determine what values you have as well, right? So you can kind of bounce ideas off those people just to be like, okay, I can actually see myself. These people see me in a higher place, and it just motivates you to keep growing and keep getting better yourself, which is at the end of the day what you want. Did that help in your business in terms of like your public speaking as well? Did they kind of back you to say, yes, you've got that and you should pursue this?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. One example in particular is Elliot's an absolute maniac in terms of his work ethic, and like a few years ago we'd like take the piss, but in a good way. Like, I'd be working and it'd be like 8 o'clock at night, and I'd be like, oh, I'm just finishing for the day, and then he'd send me a Snapchat 2 hours later. It was like, yeah, I'm still grafting, and I'm like, fuck's sake. And then I'd like get back on my laptop and start doing more work, just because, and that's not like a toxic work thing. That's just like, I'm grafting, I'm getting after it, I'm trying to achieve my goals and my dreams. And it wasn't in terms of like for him showing off. That's just how he is as a person. It's just his work ethic is like unmatched against anybody else. But obviously for me, I idolize that, and that's what I look up to. And without him being like that, then I would not be as driven, as motivated as I am today.
Yeah, I was going to ask as well, after that last point you were talking about when you're with other people, and it just kind of brought me back to this fact that we are constantly scrolling on social media, man. Like, we're constantly surrounded by what other people are doing, maybe their definitions of success, what success may look like if other people got it before us, or whatever else they're doing, and we always fall into this trap. Do you think that that's one of the biggest reasons why mental health and people are struggling in today's world? And do you speak on that too?
Yeah, 100%. I think, don't get wrong, social media is brilliant for a lot of ways. You know, when you have an important message, you can reach a lot of people. But I think if you got rid of social media, then mental health or mental ill health would be, you know, halved at least. And I think there's a few reasons why. The first reason, like you mentioned, is that, you know, comparison is the thief of joy. And when you think you're doing well and you've smashed a day or something like that, or you've just bought your first house, and you know, in England, to buy your first house these days is a fucking feat in itself because the house prices are ridiculous. And then you're going online and seeing some other Tom, Dick or Harry who's just bought a even bigger house, and you're like, oh fuck, well I feel shit now. Do you know what I mean? And that's the problem with Instagram. But the fact is, and I say this in my talk, that is just one image on one day that could not even be a true perception of what's actually going on. So you're then comparing yourself to that. And I use myself as an example. When I was just coming through my spell of depression, I was in Ibiza, living it up and posting photos on Instagram all the time, you know, with a massive smile on my face at pool parties, like just having a whale of a time. But in the background, I just like openly admitted that I was suicidal. But yeah, I'm posting a photo on Instagram with a massive smile on my face. In the caption it says "loving life," but yeah, in the background I'm fucked. Like that's the problem with Instagram. You know, it is the highlight reel of everybody's lives. And I'm such a big advocate of, you know, as it's so much easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. You know, we all, like you said, fall into the trap so easily. But if you can just compare yourself to yourself and try and make yourself better than the day before, then that's half the battle. So, but the other thing with Instagram is, and this is where it gets a bit complicated in terms of the science, that one thing I've been really big into in the last 18 months is how we can improve the neurotransmitters in our brain and the chemistry of what makes us feel good and what makes us feel stressed, and different ways we can combat against that or improve these various different hormones. And one thing that I've recently read quite a lot is that the hormone that you have called dopamine that makes us feel good, this normally stems from when you do something that requires hard work, when you're working for a goal, when you go to the gym, you train really hard, you have a cold shower, anything like that. You put yourself in an uncomfortable position that you don't want to be in, but you do it and you have that feeling of self-accomplishment. That is where real dopamine is released, and you have a long-lasting feeling from those particular things. But then there's also other things that can release dopamine, but in the wrong way, where you have a spike and then it's crashed down. And social media is one of those exact things. So when you're sat scrolling aimlessly on your phone, looking at all these amazing photos, your dopamine's spiking. But then by the end of being on your phone for 2 hours, it's depleted so much that you feel shit. And that, again, is one of the massive issues with Instagram and social media, because your actual chemistry, the science in your brain, is depleted because of the amount of scrolling that you've been doing, looking at everybody's lives on Instagram. So one thing I'm very conscious of at the moment is, yes, I'm on Instagram a lot because of my business, but if I'm chilling downstairs, I'll put my phone upstairs now, and the last couple of hours of the evening I'll spend it without my phone, watching a film with my partner, just being present in the moment, which I'm a big believer in.
No, that's such sound advice, and I completely agree. I've been doing a bit of research in terms of like from an athlete's perspective and playing football and whatnot, but Andrew Huberman talks about that dopamine, right? And he talks about,
this is where I follow him, and this is where it's all come from.
So good, man. So switched on. Like, just phenomenal. And I didn't even realize it, but when he's talking about athletes, he's like, we actually produce so much dopamine when we're in the pursuit of something, right? It's like when we're actually chasing something, when we're striving to achieve these things. And then he's like, when we achieve it though, it's like because we've built up this picture in our mind, we hit the goal and then it doesn't actually match what we thought the feeling was going to be like.
Expectation. Yeah.
So then we just completely go below baseline, and obviously it'll build itself back up over time. But that's what I'm so curious about with athletes. It's like when you're actually chasing that goal, yes, it's so good to be striving for something, but when you're there, it's like, okay, you actually have to really think about appreciating it for what it is and for the journey you've taken, right?
100%, mate. That's it. I think I posted a video about this not too long ago. That it's another reason why people unfortunately struggle with their mental health is because they work so hard towards something, thinking that this external factor is the thing that's going to bring them happiness. But then they get there and they achieve this goal and they're fucked because they're not happy. When in reality, the thing that brings us happiness is the work towards the goal and being, like I said, being present in the moment and embracing every single day and the opportunities and the hard work and the challenges, and knowing that that is the thing that makes us happy. When you understand that, that is when you are truly happy. That, you know, happiness is an inside job and it always comes from within. It's not from any other external factor. So when you really start to understand that, then that's when you become truly happy, I believe.
Yeah, bang on, bro, bang on. Whoever's been listening to this podcast constantly will probably be sick of me repeating this, but the last 2 episodes, I've said that when I talked to a sports psychologist, and he said that if you're nothing without the medal, then you'll never be anything with it, right? It's just it's exactly that, and that's what it comes down to. Just staying on the topic of Instagram, this is a bit off the mental health side of things, but when I'll chuck your Instagram in the link below so people can go check out your story, check out your content, but they'll see you in a 3-piece suit looking flash as and giving your talks, man. So talk to me about the suit. What's the story behind that?
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. So basically, my dad, stemming back from my dad, you know, being an old school businessman, he always wore a suit, always wore a tie, like non-negotiable for him, and it just you know stemmed into what I did. And when I delivered my first talk, I'd been out on the road seeing customers, and I had my suit on, so I wore my suit, and it like instantly became part of my brand. And when I've got my suit on, that's when I feel comfortable. That's when it's like my suit of armor. I'm like, right, I'm ready to go now. Like, let's do it. But then recently, it wasn't until this head teacher actually said to me, I think it's really important that you wear a suit because you stand up there looking really smart, look like a businessman, look really professional, but then you then say that you struggle with your mental health, you were depressed, you were suicidal. And it's a real shock for some people because most people would look at somebody that looks like you and think you've got it all together, you know, you've never had any problems, you know, you're a businessman, you're on top of the world, you're rich, whatever, all that shit. But you've just said that you were struggling, you were depressed, you were suicidal. So somebody that looks like that might not always have it together. And it's in life in general, some people that look like they've always got it together and look really happy and they've got this suit of armour on, sometimes are the people that are struggling the most. And it just solidified for me even more so why the suit is so important, part of my brand.
Yeah, man, you cannot judge a book by its cover. That's and that's incredible, man. That's so powerful. I think that's such a good way to wrap up this episode, man. Like, honestly, that's I appreciate you sharing from your emotions, from what's real, and sharing your story, and how obviously I came across it on Instagram and through social media, and I think it's so powerful. So I just want to say keep doing what you're doing. It's such an important message, and I'm looking forward to keep following you, bro, and seeing you talk in front of thousands, if not more, people in the future.
No, I appreciate it, mate. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for your time.
No, of course, my pleasure. Cheers, mate.
Take care, mate. Cheers.
Yo, real quick before you leave, I just want to say a massive thank you for tuning into today's episode of In the Arena. I also want to give a massive shout out to Tom. I'm going to leave his Instagram in the description below. Make sure to go give him a follow. I know he's stepping into the coaching space, so he's going to be impacting even more lives with his incredible message. From a place of pain, turning that into such positive message and positive story to impact many people's lives. So thank you, Tom. Guys, if you really enjoyed today's message, all I can say is please share. Please share it with someone because you may not know the impact that this could have on their lives. With that being said, check on your friends, check on your family, check on those in your life that you love, because as said in the podcast, you cannot judge a book by its cover, and you don't know what someone else may be going through. So with that being said, guys, give us a follow on Instagram, give us a follow on TikTok. Stay safe, stay healthy, and next time we'll see you back here in the arena.